Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be when you're watching this video. I just first wanted to say thank you for taking the time to hear what I have to say. And for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Brian Dixon. I work for USANA Health Sciences. I have a PhD in molecular and cellular biology, and during that degree, we had in the laboratory a huge focus on nutrition. So we were really trying to understand what was the fundamental things that are changing inside of us, inside of our cells as we're getting older. But then we would ask these experimental questions. Were there nutritional interventions that we could employ that could either slow down, stop, or in even some cases reverse the aging process, at least on that molecular and biochemical level? My main duties here at USANA Health Sciences are to manage a department that we call Health and Science Education. And this was a department that was started up 3 to 4 years ago. And the whole goal of this department was to get out to the public real science-based information as it relates to health, wellness, human nutrition, and of course, nutritional supplementation. As most of you know, this industry really is buyer beware. So I caution you, if you're going out and you're doing internet searches, make sure you're really doing your due diligence to understand what's the source behind what you're reading. Because on the internet, it's very easy for anybody to become an expert. So I encourage you, go to a reputable, reliable source, and we hope we provide one of those sources for you. So we are everywhere, constantly putting out information, especially around nutrition. So I encourage you, if you haven't already, join us on Facebook and Instagram. And we've had tremendous success, especially on Facebook, in reaching literally every single country around the world. So join the hundreds of thousands of people who are already connecting with us on Facebook. We're also putting out every single day little tidbits through Twitter. So I encourage you also to connect with us at ask, and this underscore is very important, ask_scientist, to constantly be trickled out with health information. And then for whatever reason, if you'd like to connect with me, I'm on both Facebook and Instagram at Brian M. Dixon. But our main goal as a department is to run and manage a website that we call askthescientist.com. So I hope most of you are familiar who are going to be watching this video, but if you're not, I really do encourage you to go check out this website, askthescientist.com, and it is jam-packed with thousands of articles relating to health, wellness, nutrition, and nutritional supplementation. So if you do have a question, whether it relates to USANA products or just general health and wellness, please come here first, do your search. But the other thing that's so amazing about this website is if you do have a question and for some reason we don't answer it, there's a link at the bottom of every single entry, or I should say answer, where you can be put in contact directly with USANA scientists here. So we can give you a little more in-depth information should you need it. And then something else I want to do for you all, just for taking the time out of your morning, afternoon, or evening, is people are always asking me for my slides. So working with our tech guru here in the department, we're going to upload this slide, these presentations at askthescientist.com/28-day challenge. So I encourage you, go there, download the slides. If you want to take a minute, push pause on this video, go pull the slides so you can kind of follow along and make notes as we go. That would be amazing. What I want to focus on and talk about today is nutrition, but specifically fundamental, foundational nutrition, okay? And I want to make the case why nutrition is so important for your health, and it needs to be the first place that you start as you're starting to take charge of your health, okay? So I know you guys are back there behind the screen, but let me ask you just kind of some rhetorical questions just to get your brain moving a little bit. The facts of the matter are, when we look at how long people are living and living around the world in modern societies, the fact of the matter is we have never lived longer than we currently are today. So just some fun facts, but around the year 1900, we were living about 55 years. 55 years of age was the average lifespan for somebody around the year 1900. Anybody know what the average lifespan is now? It's actually gone up just a little bit. What would you guess? How about 80? So now our average lifespan is 80 years old. Okay, that's great. We've never lived longer, but are we actually living better? So this is our founder, and he loves to say that we are living too short and we are dying too long. Well, what is Dr. Wentz referring to? Well, he's referring to the scientific literature, and this also comes back to my background in the aging process. What Dr. Wentz is referring to is that we tend to lead the last 10 years of life suffering from some sort of disability or morbidity as we're getting older. So we're not living health or the last 10 years of our lives in this healthful state. We're suffering from some condition. In fact, do you know what the number one cause of disability is? And start thinking about this as it relates to your quality of life. The number one form of disability literally around the world is arthritis, and then specifically it's knee arthritis. Okay? So think about it, as you can't move around so well. I think about my mom, who has just horrendous arthritis in her wrists and her fingers from her 30 plus years just typing, doing customer service on a keyboard. My dad, not all that long ago, had to go into our house and he had to change all the doorknobs from those twisting type doorknobs that we had to those ones that are more lever so that my mom could actually open the doors. And these things slowly but surely creep up on us over time, and they are negatively affecting our quality of life. And the bottom line is lifespan is outpacing health span. Lifespan is outpacing health span. And this is a relatively new term. So it's not how long we're living, but it's actually how long during our lives are we healthy. So let me tell you, again, a lot of misinformation out there, but there is currently no known way to increase our lifespan. What I believe is that we were giving a finite number of years to be on this planet, and it's the decisions that we're making in our life that are actually shortening that lifespan, and especially our health span. So if we come back to our graph and we say, oh, okay, on average we're living 80 years of age, well, effectively when it comes to quality of life, we have to erase those last 10 years. We're really only living to our fullest 70 years. We've taken over 10% off of our lives, and especially our quality of lives. And so for us in nutrition, back when I was doing all this research on the aging process, the question we were always trying to ask ourselves is how can we bridge that gap between health span and lifespan? And what I want to postulate is that this gap exclusively exists because of the decisions we make in our lives. It's our lifestyle. Our lifestyle is determining our health span. And quite frankly, it is our health that is a function of how we're living our lives. So think about that. If you look at somebody who's really in shape, right, they've got those six-pack abs, bright glowing skin, you can tell just by looking at them, they're eating right, they're going to the gym every morning, they are leading a healthy lifestyle. And then conversely, you can look at those people who are watching TV, they're not getting out in the sun, they're pale and pasty, sitting on the couch watching TV. What do they look like, right? Our health is a reflection that we literally wear on our faces. Let me ask you another question. Do you think that you can control your health span? Can you control your health span? What do you think? Well, back in my days in the laboratories doing all this aging research, we used to talk about the rule of three. We used to talk about your lifestyle, your environment, and your genetics. 33%, 33%, 33%, the rule of three. Or a third of your health span was related to your lifestyle, a third of your health span was related to your environment, and a third of your health span was given to you from your mom and your dad. Let me ask you another rhetorical question. How many of these do you think you control? Can you control your lifestyle? You know, when I give this presentation actually in front of a live audience, almost everybody raises their hand that, yes, I can control my lifestyle. How about your environment? Can you control your environment? Can you control where you live? You know, about half of the hands go down in the room, and I see some heads kind of nodding, down, diagonal, whatever. And yeah, it's harder to change your environment. We have family ties, maybe we have work ties, whatever it might be. But when it came down to it, if we had to, we could change our environment. And then the one that only one or two hands goes up in is genetics, right? Can you control your genetics? What do you think? What do you think? Can you control your genetics? So let's talk about this for just a second. We'll go through these one at a time. And I'm going to come back to the scientific literature, and I tend to put the references on every side when I am talking about it, so feel free, pull up the reference, read about it for yourself. So here was a study that was done back in 2002 by Dr. Walt Willett. Professor Willett is at the Harvard School of Public Health, and Dr. Willett is an epidemiologist, which means he's very good at looking at populations of people, looking at their behaviors and their lifestyles, and determining if that lifestyle or that behavior is shortening their lives. So what do I mean? What's an example I could give you? Well, think about cigarette smoking. It is now very well established that if you're a cigarette smoker, you're at a very high rate of premature death. So it was work done by Dr. Willett and his colleagues that starts to identify these risk factors for shortening both our lifespans and our health spans. So back in this study, in this very prestigious journal, Science, Dr. Willett asked the question, what if I turned my models upside down? What if I asked the question, were there things people were doing in their lives that could actually lengthen, not necessarily a lifespan, but definitely their health span? So he looked at a number of chronic conditions that are known to be related to our lifestyles and how we're living our lives, and started to do the math. And look what he found. 2 of these chronic conditions were over 70% preventable if people were willing to lead a healthy lifestyle. Right? I'm sorry, but you still have to eat healthy, you still have to exercise, and oh, by the way, he did include some nutritional supplementation in there as well. Looking at another condition was over 80% preventable if you're willing to lead a healthy lifestyle. And then 4th, I think we could all probably guess what this 4th one is. Over 90% preventable if you were willing to lead a healthy lifestyle. Okay, so clear scientific evidence that if you're willing to lead a healthy lifestyle, you can clearly take charge of your health span. Okay, let's go to the environment. Right? About 50% of you are going to be skeptical whether or not you can change your environment. But let me make the point why this is so important. So scientists like to do these things they call immigration studies. So what they'll do is look at a population of people that's living in one region of the world, and they'll measure what's happening to them. Are they getting diseases prematurely, these chronic conditions prematurely, or do they have low rates? Okay. Then they'll look at that population when they move to a different region. Okay? And they'll say, do they have the same rates or do they have different rates? Okay? So this is, again, one of these chronic conditions where they looked at the Chinese. Chinese, on average, in this case was specifically, I believe it was prostate cancer, but I don't want to get hung up on the disease per se. These have been repeated with a number of chronic conditions, so it doesn't really matter. But Chinese have a very, very low rate of this condition, 1.8 per 100,000 individuals. Very, very low. But look what happens. If you're born in China, move to, in this case, North America, and you live there for 5 to 10 years, look what happens. Your rate of this condition goes up by 10 to 15 fold. Not percent, but fold, right? 10x. Okay? So there's something about North America that's definitely very carcinogenic. Okay? Now, what happens if you're first generation, so you have Chinese in your background, Chinese in your genes, but you're born in North America? Look, your rate goes up. Now we're to 35 per 100,000, right? So almost another doubling again. And then lastly, if you look like me, we have horrific rates. So me, my risk factor is 55 per 100,000. So clearly the point I want to make is that where you're living, and it's probably related back to lifestyle, where you're living, adopting that lifestyle is dictating your health outcome. Okay, so I want you to take charge of your health. Think about where you're living. Think about maybe you can't move wherever you are right now, but maybe you can start to think about doing things a little bit better inside of your house, right? You can control the environment inside of your health, and there's many, many things you can do to make that environment better. Last thing I want to talk about is genetics, and I'm going to kind of weave my point into a little bit of a story, okay? And I'm going to try to convince you that the dogma has changed. The dogma has changed from basically having 66% ownership of your health span to almost 100% ownership, okay? So let me try to make this point. This is getting to be a long time ago now, but if you don't recognize who this famous individual is, her name is Dolly the sheep. And if you know, great, but if you don't know, Dolly became famous because she was the first ever cloned animal. Pretty cool, right? First ever cloned animal. So a lot of people know Dolly, but a lot of people don't know this kitty cat, okay? And then here she is grown up. It's a funny kind of backstory about how this cat came to be. There was a company out of California whose whole business model was that we love our pets so much, and we're heartbroken when they unfortunately pass away. But their business model is, because we love our pets so much, what if we could take DNA from these cats and dogs while they were still alive, freeze it away, and then when you actually did want to have a new cat or a dog, why not just give you your exact same dog or cat that you love so much back? And the really funny thing about this company is its name. So its name was Genetic Savings and Clone. I mean, pretty cheesy. I don't think scientists are super creative when it comes to name. But anyway, back to the cat. Do you see a problem here? I mean, if we're talking a genetic clone, what's the issue here? Right? This kitten looks nothing like her mom, where she got the DNA from. So the scientists at first thought, gosh, we must have made a mistake. Maybe there was contamination. Maybe it wasn't a perfect clone. They go back, they sequence the DNA, and sure enough, they're genetically identical. Their primary DNA sequence is exactly the same. So, gosh, what's going on here? So this cat literally single-handedly started a brand new field of genetics that we call epigenetics. And what epigenetics is the study of a chemical code that actually lays on top of your genetic code. And it turns out it's that chemical code laying on top of your DNA genetic code that is the most important to determine whether or not genes are turned on or genes are turned off, okay? But let's talk about why this is important. Because what has been shown is that the health of your mother is actually very important to determine your health, okay? So here on the screen we have two mice. These mice are effectively identical twins. Identical twins. Now, they were born from different mothers, but they have the exact same genetic background. So, how are they so different if they have that same genetic background? Well, the mother of this mouse was fed a very unhealthy mouse diet and was not allowed to exercise. The mom of this skinny, brown, good-looking mouse, right, it has great hair, has no health problems when you actually dig into the physiology. The mom of this mouse was allowed to run on a wheel, so was able to exercise in her cage, and was also fed a healthy mouse diet. And so by doing nothing more than changing the lifestyle of the mother, you get two dramatically different mice as a result. So when they plug in and they finally look at, hey, what's going on with these two mice, it's the changes in that epigenetic code. And it's the lifestyle of the mother that was changing that epigenetic code. It's amazing, right? And it's scary to think that your mom, even your grandma, and even your grandma's mom could be affecting your health outcome. Okay, so I've shown you something in sheep, I've shown you something in cats, I've shown you something now in mice, but the question is, does this really happen in humans? Well, the answer is yes. Your lifestyle and environment is changing your epigenetic code. And here's a study that was done in twins. And forgive me, scientists love to use these big fancy words. Monozygotic just means identical twins. So what they did in these identical twins is they looked at this chemical code that's laying on top of their DNA when they were 3 years old, and then 47 years later, they came back and looked at that same spot in the code again. Now the specifics don't really matter, but can you see how when they're 3 years old, basically their epigenetic codes line up. All the lines are basically the same. But when they come back 47 years later, look what they see. Look how these lines are clearly different. So as these twins went off and led their own individual lives, look what happened to their epigenetic code. It's crazy. So you can actually affect your genetics, and specifically how your genes are turned on or turned off through both your lifestyle and your environment. So think about that. And again, just to drive that point home, health is clearly a function, almost in every single way, of how we're living our lives. The thing, and now the point I want to make, the thing that is the most important in all of this, lifestyle, environment, your genetics, is nutrition. I can tie links to each one of those. Your lifestyle, right? That's Dr. Wilt's study. Immigration studies, probably to the diet, what you're actually eating in the different regions. And then your genetics. Clearly, your lifestyle and your environment is changing that epigenetic signature by nothing more than the food you're putting in your mouth. Right? So think about that. And again, why I applaud you for being part of this 28-day challenge and starting to take charge of your health. So just to kind of reset just a little bit and really drill down on why nutrition is so important, and again, I'm going to show you more scientific studies. This was a grant proposal, a multi-million-dollar grant proposal that I worked on with my advisor and mentor back at the Linus Pauling Institute, Professor Torrey Hagen. An amazing man. We would literally start every single grant we were submitting to these big government agencies with a sentence very similar to this. But the benefits of inexpensive but effective micronutrients, right? Read nutrition with micronutrients, to ameliorate these various age-related conditions. So, what are we talking about here? So, as we were identifying things that were changing with age, depending on what the specific pathway or thing was, we would target nutritional interventions to try to see if we could change those and definitely slow them down from happening and having the deleterious effects we knew would occur with these changes over time, okay? And we were very successful in this approach. Now, but here's some hard data to what we're talking about, and this comes from the Council for Responsible Nutrition. And what they did is they went in and they did a study, and they looked at a number of those age-related chronic conditions that we're talking about, so of which there are 4 listed here, okay? Now, they went on further to talk about if people were getting the proper level of nutrients that are known to positively affect these conditions, what was happening. And look, it's all things you've heard of, things like fiber, omega-3 fatty acids, that healthy fat from fish or walnut or flax seeds, B vitamins, chromium. Here for eye health, you have lutein and zeaxanthin, and then for bone health, calcium, vitamin D, and magnesium. So just getting those nutrients in adequate levels, look what they found. When people were getting older, we were affecting about 75% with these various conditions. But if we could ensure they were getting the right amount of nutrition targeted towards these chronic conditions, look what they found. Somewhere between a 3.3 and a 23% reduction in the rates of those chronic conditions occurring. So again, very hard evidence that nutrition can positively affect your health span. It can hopefully help shorten that gap. Now, you want to talk about really affecting the healthcare in especially the United States, but not just the United States, but countries all around the world. Healthcare costs are continuing to skyrocket, and we just keep trying to put Band-Aids. This is obviously a very hot topic here in the United States, and it's a hot topic around the world. Countries are literally worried to death that if we do not do something about our healthcare costs, it's going to bankrupt the United States and the richest countries all around the world. We have to do something. And if you want to talk about that cheap and effective way to make a difference in our health, it's nutrition. Because again, coming back to this same study, they found an approximate $40 billion in savings if people would just get the right levels of nutrition. Right? That's insane. This is how important nutrition is. So now let's look. As Americans, how are we doing? Well, frankly, we are doing terrible. Absolutely terrible. Look, for you women who might be listening, odds are you are going to be deficient in vitamin E. Men, you're not doing much better at about 90%. But almost every single woman is going to be deficient in vitamin E. That is insane. And being deficient in one nutrient is one nutrient too many. And I don't mean to throw a laundry list of nutrients and percent deficiencies at you, but there's a very simple way to remember it. And it's what I like to call the alphabet soup of nutritional deficiencies. And it literally starts at the top of the alphabet. Vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin E. Right? There is no vitamin F, and I just didn't put vitamin K on here. Then we're talking about bone health. So we've got calcium, magnesium, also very, very deficient in our diet. So negatively affecting our bone health, okay? So nutrition, right? I showed you the statistics about how just getting the right levels of very simple and common and inexpensive nutrients could help with your health span. And it's so important that we're thinking about nutrition and not doing anything crazy, just getting back to the basics, getting back to the fundamentals, starting to think about our foundational nutrition. And so when I talk about nutrition, I like to talk about micronutrients and I like to talk about macronutrients. So micros, you might guess, are those nutrients that we need in relatively small quantities. They can be things on the microgram level, they can be things on the milligram level. So I usually say a gram or less. And then you've got macronutrients, things that we need in a gram or more. So things like carbohydrates, essential fatty acids, those essential amino acids we need to get from our diet, right? Those are the macronutrients. So think of these as the foods, think of those as vitamins and minerals. Very simple, okay? Now, I'm going to do another little thought experiment with you, okay? I hope everybody recognizes this gentleman up on the screen. Right? It's Gandhi, if you're not familiar. Gandhi was an amazing man, just simply put, an amazing man. And Gandhi was famous for doing a lot of hunger strikes to try to make his political or social points. Okay, so he'd go on these hunger strikes to try to bring awareness to his causes. So he would go on normally about 21 days, right, sipping on water, but he really wouldn't eat any type of food. And you could tell he was a skinny man as a result. But he could sip on this water, he could go 21 days, and then after the 21 days, he would slowly start to introduce food back into his diet, and he could get himself back to health. And I don't know if Gandhi knew it or not, but it turns out that 21-day period is pretty critical. If you go too much longer than 21 days, and especially more than a month, you start to have some deleterious consequences that occurs. And if he were to go much longer than that month, you know, maybe a month and a half, 2, maybe 3, depending on where you were when you started, you're eventually gonna die, right, from starvation. So again, with this little thought experiment I want to do with you, if you're thinking about starvation, and if Gandhi were to pass away from one of his hunger strikes going longer than this month or 2, what would he die from? What would you guess? What would you die from? Well, is he dying from a macronutrient deficiency, or is he dying from a micronutrient deficiency? What would you guess? Well, it turns out when you starve to death, you tend to die from a heart attack. And you tend to die from a heart attack because your heart works exclusively, almost exclusively, on fat. So fat is the primary fuel for your heart. Okay? Now, as you can see, Gandhi is a pretty skinny man. So as that starvation goes out, you start to lose that body fat that is required to run your heart, and you slowly die. So the answer is you tend to die from a macronutrient deficiency. So you could almost argue that on the short term, macronutrition is more important than more important to your overall health, and especially in the short term. Now, it's when we start talking about, and I've got a whole nother presentation on this, so I apologize, so stay tuned for the next one. But it's when we start talking about the micronutrients, the vitamins and the minerals, those are going to be more important for your long-term health. So as we're starting to talk about bridging that gap between lifespan and health span, we really have to start thinking about our vitamins and the minerals, right? The essential vitamins and minerals. And just another little aside, but do you know why they're called essential vitamins and minerals, or essential carbohydrates, or essential fatty acids, or essential amino acids? In biology, the word essential has a very specific definition, and it means they are essential for life, i.e., if you do not get them from your diet, you will die from that deficiency, okay? So I want to argue that we need to get back to the basics. We need to get back to thinking about this fundamental nutrition, and you can't talk about nutrition without talking about macronutrition and micronutrition. Okay? And the very simple way that I like to think about it is this old-time automobile assembly line. Okay, so here you have the cars coming down the assembly line. I like to think of those as those macronutrients. Then you have obviously all these workers there. They're putting the seats in the car, putting the steering wheels in, putting the wheels on the car, and it keeps going down the line. I like to think of these workers as being the vitamins and minerals. Okay? So what happens if cars stop coming down that assembly line? What are those workers going to do? Well, they're just going to be standing around, right? Having nothing to do, right? So that factory, in essence, comes to a screeching halt. Now what happens if I take all of the workers off of there? What if I remove all the vitamins and minerals from the system? What happens to those cars? Are they still going to get made? No. Again, that assembly line comes to a screeching halt. So we need to think about macronutrition and micronutrition working in this optimal ratio together to basically make our cells, our cellular assembly lines, working as efficiently as possible. Okay, so watch this. What happens if I remove 50% of the workers from that line? Remember, most of us aren't overtly deficient in a lot of those vitamins and minerals from that alphabet soup of nutritional deficiencies I showed you. But if you were to add all those up, it'd be somewhere around 50%. That's what we're talking about here. If I remove 50% of those workers from the line, what happens to the efficiency of that factory? Cars are still going to get made, but they're not going to get made as quickly as they could. That assembly line is not working as efficiently as it could. And this is exactly the analogy that we're talking about. When we look at the amount of nutrition the average American is getting in their diet, it's what we call a subclinical deficiency. So things are still working, they're just not working as optimally as they could. And so when we think about nutrition, and for the company that I work for, USANA Health Sciences, we're always thinking about this fundamental nutrition. And we're thinking about fundamental nutrition across our entire product line offerings. So it doesn't matter if it's our foods or our macronutrition, or if it's our supplements and our micronutrition. We're even thinking about foundational nutrition when it comes to skincare. again, a talk for another day. But nutrition is the heart of everything, and it's always at the forefront of how we're thinking here at USANA. And another analogy to that point I like to get across is this one here. So thinking about the fundamentals, thinking about that basic foundational nutrition that we all need. Look at this. So here we have two images, right? One on the left, one on the right. One is going to be a nice, warm, cozy home for a wonderful family, and the other one's going to be a massive skyscraper. But what do these two structures have in common here? What do they have in common? They have concrete or cement as that foundation. Concrete or cement for this foundation. If you don't get the foundation right here, there is no way you can build a skyscraper on top of it. And you can see all the engineering that's gone into making sure that foundation is solid so you can build on top of it. The same goes for that house, right? If you were just to build this frame on top of just loose gravel, that house is not going to stand, and it's not going to stand the test of time. It's going to come crumbling down. You have to get the foundation right before you can do anything else. So I encourage you all out there, as you're going down this 28-day challenge, I want you to think about your fundamental nutrition, right? I want you to think about your macronutrition. And I've been watching what's going on in this group. I've seen all the amazing recipes that have been shared, cooking lessons, the macronutrition, right? Whether you're cooking healthy, whether you're reaching for healthy alternatives, get your macronutrition right. And then, because odds are you are going to be nutritionally deficient, you have to get your micronutrients right. And if you're going to choose to only take one thing, right? You don't want to take a big handful of pills or tablets every single day. If you're going to take one product, I encourage you to take a multivitamin, multi-mineral supplement. Get those essential vitamins and minerals squared away first. Get that foundation squared away first before you start to build whatever your health goal might be. And that's exactly where you should start. And we make it super, super easy with what we call our Cell Essentials, right? And then our health pack makes it very, very simple, very, very convenient. And we have you covered whether or not you're a kid, whether or not you're an adolescent or a teenager. We have you covered, okay? So you can't just think about yourselves. I want you also thinking about your entire family, all right? And if you think about especially your kids, when kids are young, they're growing like crazy. And what's been shown is pound for pound, a child, a teen, an adolescent, they actually need more nutrition than us adults. We're basically stagnant, right? We're basically going to stay the same. But kids are putting on bone like crazy, they're putting on muscles like crazy. So you also not just need to think about your nutrition, but think about your family's nutrition as well. And I also want you to think about people you know who might be thinking about becoming pregnant, people who are pregnant, or even if you're still breastfeeding. There's no more vulnerable time in a child's development as those literally first days after conception. So again, think about this foundational nutrition for yourselves, for your families, and then for anybody you know who's, again, thinking about becoming pregnant, is pregnant, and then all the way through the breastfeeding phase, okay? So those are really the main points I wanted to talk about today when it comes to foundational nutrition. So what I hope I've convinced you of is that by joining groups like these in these 28-day challenges, by using your support network that's around you, with deliberate action, you really can take charge of your health span. So again, I applaud you for being part of this group. Nutrition, nutrition, nutrition is absolutely the most important thing you can do for your overall health. And don't overthink it here, okay? Start with the basics. Make sure you are getting all of those essential vitamins and minerals that your body needs. Get that foundation right to springboard you into whatever your actual health goals are, whether it's running a triathlon, whether it's running a marathon, cycling 100 miles, playing basketball with your kids out in the driveway, whatever it might be. If you get those basics right, those basics right, it's going to springboard you into your actual health goals. So with that, again, I just want to thank you for tuning in to hear what I had to say. I hope you've got a little bit out of it. All the best with the rest of your 28-day challenge. I'm going to be watching you. So again, lean on AskTheScientist.com. If you have any questions, you can reach me directly through that website. Again, all the best, and thank you again.